Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Best weather show around? We can only hope. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, north of the Southern State and Sunrise Highways, and south of the Long Island Expressway, also south of the Long Island Railroad. And with this pending icing situation, Long Island's kind of in a funny spot here, but other parts of the tri state area are not. It's a little more definitive as you go to the west. There might be need for additional salt and sand, calcium, de-icer, pelleto, mag, ice, pellets, and flakes, all the things that you use to make sure that your home or business is in tip-top shape, and that includes snow blowers, spreaders, shovels, and so much more. And of course, the tri-state area's largest supplier of rock salt at the lowest prices around. So head over to Omni. 631756 is the telephone number, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
okay.
.com.
.com. Yes. Well, good evening, Mr. Rayo. Before we start, just let me do a little bit of business here. So, just to let everybody know that tomorrow night starting time, Mr. Rayo, is
8 o'clock. 8 p.m.
8 o'clock.
Big hand on the 12, little hand on the 8.
In case you're using your hands, yes.
Yes.
And we have tomorrow night a special guest, Tony Gigi, retired forecaster, meteorologist from the National Weather Service in Mount Holly, New Jersey. You've seen him on here before, and not sure, but hopefully it'll be meteorologist Bill Goodman also joining us tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, meteorologist and forecaster for the National Weather Service in Upton, New York. In case you don't know where Upton is, as opposed to downtown, or it's not Downton Abbey, but Upton is in Brookhaven in central Long Island, and their forecast coverage is the New York City metro area, including the lower Hudson Valley and coastal Connecticut, as well as Long Island and parts of northeastern New Jersey. Also, download my free weather app, the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, which you can get on Google Play or on the App Store, and it's free, as in FREE, and you'll find all the ice forecast maps from the Weather Service there, so you can check to see what their ice accretion forecast is, and then you can go forecast shopping and compare it to everybody else. Because as we know, forecast shopping is hazardous to your health. So go to Google Play or the App Store and download the app for free. Either Well, do it after the show is over, because I think a lot of you are watching on your phone. And by the way, you can watch the show on your phone via the app, because the show broadcasts live. You can broadcast the show live directly from the app. Also, for those of you who want additional weather analysis and forecasts, you can subscribe to my pay platform on Patreon, patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee, for just $2 a month. And there are higher tiers for those of you who need a little extra hand holding and conversation during these things. And by conversation, I mean direct messaging. So just check that out, patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And there are links all over the place. And that's it. That's my business for today. Make sure, everybody, you read the pinned post, please, and adhere by the rules of the chat board, and keep things fun and keep things respectable. And that's all I ask. Okay? That's all Joe and I ask. So, and yes, Ruthless Goat, who's dug under a foot of snow in Colorado as part of this whole storm mess. You can also watch it on your smart TV. Even Mother Rayo watches it on a smart TV on a full screen. Bless her heart. My mother doesn't watch.
Right.
She doesn't care.
Not right now. Mother Ray will be watching after Wheel of Fortune is over in about 24 minutes. So that's when they switch over, my sister and I. By the way, I promoted tonight's show on both of my Facebook platforms with the following. Of course, I added the link to the show, but I wrote tonight, if ice were you, I'd slide over to watch the Joe and Joe weather show at 7:30 tonight to get the latest on the prospects of a slick and slippery day for Friday. And yes, Joe, I do believe it looks rather slick out there come Friday here in the tri-state area.
Yeah, there are going to be places that are going to be okay. I'm thinking if you're south of Route 195 in New Jersey, I think you'll be fine. If you're along the I-95 corridor, say south of Trenton down to Metro Philadelphia, for example, you're kind of on the edge, but I'm thinking that the 32-degree line may stay north and west of you. Long Island is always in these situations is in a funny spot because sometimes they find a way to drain the cold air down from the north from New England on a north-northeast wind. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. Your forecast, the city, New York City, probably going to get some ice out of this. The Weather Service raised their ice accretion amounts by a bit. And further north, Joe, where you are, I'm thinking in general, sort of a general forecast of the places that get the ice. I'm thinking a tenth. I've kind of nudged it up just a little bit, a tenth to maybe some places getting a quarter of an inch. I looked at the Foose this afternoon, and when I saw LaGuardia's temperature at the lowest level of the atmosphere, because remember, we're talking about maybe the bottom 4,000 feet here, a very, very shallow layer of cold air. The temperature at LaGuardia is actually at 0 or 32 at 7 a.m. and by 10 a.m. By 1 p.m. it drops to -3 Celsius or about 26, 27. If that winds up verifying, and the GFS model's kind of on the same page with this, and also the earlier European, if that winds up verifying, that could be that. I looked at that and I thought, you know what, that could be problematic. So let's. It's all about the temperatures, and that's really what it boils down to. What are the low levels going to be? That's really the only answer left in this puzzle that we need to resolve, and we're not going to resolve that till we get to Friday morning.
Right. On my forecast for the lower Hudson Valley, I said for tomorrow night, cloudy with showery rains, possibly heavy after midnight, turning colder toward daybreak with the rain transitioning to sleet, ice, and freezing rain from north to south by sunrise, if not sooner, resulting in slick and slippery conditions for the Friday morning commute. The low temperatures, or the temperatures, let's say by 6 or 7 a.m. on Friday morning, ranging from 30 north of I-287 to maybe still holding near 40 along the Sound Shore, but then very quickly the bottom falls out of the thermometer. Friday, cloudy, periods of sleet, ice, freezing rain, maybe a few wet snowflakes thrown in for good measure, creating very slick and slippery conditions, not just in the morning, Joe, but I think right on through much of the day, falling temperatures through the day, and by late afternoon, temperatures in the lower Hudson Valley will range anywhere from 29 near the coast to 18 degrees as you go north of 287 and probably even colder north of the I-84 corridor. I just see it's going to, for most areas, at least here in the Hudson Valley, I'm looking at an ice skating rink here on Friday. I mean, it's just going to be treacherous. And I have three, not one, not two, but three kids. Two of them are my own. One is one of mine by marriage. Three teachers, and all three of them talking to me this afternoon and asking the one question: any school on Friday? And quite frankly, I don't think this looks like a delay. I think this looks like a flat out cancellation for all of them.
Are you closing schools now? Are you?
Well, I used to do that on News 12 Westchester. Janine Rose, my news director, used to say, "So, what's the verdict? What do you think about tomorrow for school?" And I'd actually say, I said, "Well, this looks more like a delay." Or sometimes I'd actually say, "I personally think it's going to be everybody's going to close." And I'd look at the camera and say, "Are you listening to me, all of you supervisors? Well, tomorrow you close."
Well, then they don't even. A lot of them don't even close anymore. They just make everybody go virtual. So.
Right.
The days of the snow days of getting snow days have dwindled pretty much to a precious few to none.
They actually have, at least at my son's school, he's got one more snow day left and he's thinking. I'm thinking that that snow, or actually, it's better we call it an ice day, because I think it is really going to be quite icy on out there on on Friday. Now, my daughter-in-law uh, goes teaches at a school in Harrison, which is in Lower Westchester, and I said, well, it's possible that it'll still be plain rain at 7 a.m. because she gets up at 5:30 in the morning and commutes southward, but it would be already icy up here. I said, I really don't know what to tell you. If they tell you that, come on in or come on down, we'll close early. You know, it's going to be that kind of a thing. It's going to be timing out the push of the cold air that, as I said yesterday, I used the term oozing southbound. It's gonna be oozing after midnight and toward daybreak on Friday morning from north to south. And once it's in, it ain't going anywhere. And unfortunately, Joe, as you saw on the Foose, we have quite a bit of precipitation to deal with
Yeah,
when the temperatures are at or below freezing.
that struck me. That struck me. That really jumped out at me. 4/10 of an inch of liquid between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. And then I went and looked at just did a little math off the maps on Pivotal Weather, and it looks like we get maybe another tenth or 15 hundredths between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. The one thing to watch, the one critical thing here is going to be the rate that the temperature drops, because we're going to get about I was thinking maybe 3/4 of an inch to maybe an inch of rain overnight going into this, once before the temperatures fall below 32. If the temperature is dropping, and it's going 30 every hour, let's say it's going 32, 31, 30, 30, 29. If it drops like that, the one upside here is the fact that the roads being wet from the rain will be a little warmer a bit longer. So it'll take longer for roads to ice up. That won't be the case, say, for trees and power lines and so on. But uh, but for the roads, it might buy you some time. The downside is, of course, that they're not going to brine beforehand, because it's going to be raining all night. So whatever they put down with brine
Right.
immediately gets washed away. What you don't want to happen is uh, and again, we don't know this. This is when we get there. This is not something we can guess how it's going to happen, but it would be just a guess, and it's a guess that has a pretty good chance of being wrong whichever way we go. So the, uh, uh, the rain washes all the brine away. If we get a situation where if the temperatures, that's it with the rain beforehand. If the temperatures go from say 32, and then the next hour it's 29, and then the next hour it's 26 or 7, and it settles there, that's a whole different ball game, because that'll cause that'll speed up the cooling of the ground. I'm actually advocating the warm ground theory here to an extent. To write the date and time down. So just bear those things in mind if you're dealing with the freezing rain. And the other thing I would say is, this is a forecast that Joe and I want to be wrong. Okay, I don't want to be,
Yes.
seriously. I really hope that it doesn't happen with regards, and thankfully we're not talking about. Let's hope that we're not talking about anything more than maybe a tenth or 15 hundredths of ice accretion, a few places at a quarter of an inch. Because if the precip winds up being more than that, then it becomes really problematic. So we can, at least we're not. It doesn't look like that we're going to get a big ice storm, but it is going to cause a bit of inconvenience. And by the way, the rest of the country, there's a huge portion. Actually, I should have counted 18 states. I counted 17, and I left out. No, it's 18. I'm sorry, it's 17. 17 states that have winter storm warnings up, and various other advisories and winter weather advisories. We even have some flash flood watches up in the southeast. So we've got a busy, busy night ahead of us, and a lot of weather to cover. So we'll why don't we pull? Let me pull up the watches and warnings map, and we'll just get right to it here. And by the way, David Fuller, I think, hit super chat. Thank you, David, for doing that. The most appreciated as always. We appreciate everybody's generosity by hitting the tip jar. And Joe Rayo will be monitoring the chat board, sharing your questions, and we'll try to answer them and get to them and answer them as best we can. So we look at all this, Joe, from Central Texas. Uh, well, let me refresh because this is before they updated. Because I just noticed because Dallas Fort Worth is under a winter storm warning now. Uh, but
And
it's
don't think that any of them down in Texas are not having thoughts about what happened a year ago in Texas with the freezes, the ice, the snow, the power outages. They're all probably saying, "Oh no, we're going to go through that again." And
yeah.
it's
The,
you can't help yourself but think about that.
Right. The more of the as much of the cold air is going east as it is going south. So it's not the full plunge of cold air like last year. But look at this from New Mexico, southeastern Colorado, northeastern Colorado. The warnings and advisories have been taken down. But we've got much of central and northeastern Texas under a winter storm warning. Winter weather advisories go all the way down south to Corpus Christi and San Antonio. We have winter storm warnings in the whole state of Arkansas, just about the whole state of Oklahoma, southern Kansas, much of Missouri, Illinois, not including Chicago now. They were in it, but they're out of it now. Indiana, southern quarter of Michigan, including Detroit, with advisories to the north, and those winter storm warnings go into all of Ohio, almost all of Kentucky, western Pennsylvania, much of upstate New York, especially from Albany northward and westward, most of Vermont, New Hampshire, and most of Maine. Advisories on the periphery, and we also have winter storm watches up for northern Pennsylvania, the northern counties of Pennsylvania into northeast PA, the Catskills, Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, southern Vermont, and coastal Maine. So some of those are going to go to warnings, and then tomorrow we'll probably see the local offices here. I'm imagining they're going to put up some winter weather advisories up for the areas to the southeastern New York, Connecticut, parts of Rhode Island, and I'm not sure what they're going to do with Long Island and northern New Jersey. But this complex, I hesitate to call it a storm system because it's really a front with massive amounts of overrunning and tons of moisture. Look at this. Look at the stream on the satellite loop that's coming out from the subtropics in the Pacific and running straight up northeast all the way into southeastern Canada. I mean, this is really just it's a fire hose. It's a fire hose west-southwest flow interacting with bitter cold air, and you get a slow-moving cold front with little waves moving along it, and they produce tons of precip.
Tom Contino on the chat board was asking, why are there watches up in New Jersey but not central Pennsylvania? But first of all,
There's
Tom,
no watches in
most
New
of the
Jersey.
watches, what he's confusing is he's looking at dense fog advisories that cover a good part. Virtually all of New Jersey is under a dense fog advisory, not a winter weather advisory or a winter storm watch or warning or whatever, but dense fog. That is their concern. Now, the reason why central Pennsylvania doesn't have anything, well, as Joe just mentioned, across the northern periphery of Pennsylvania, it's just cold enough for them to say, okay, let's issue something for the possibility of frozen precip, ice, or snow, whatever. But the rest of central Pennsylvania is likely to be just far enough to the south of the frigid Arctic air so that the precipitation falls chiefly as just plain rain. So that's the main reason, and that's why why when you see it,
they're going to go over. Yeah, they're going to go over. They'll probably go to advisories in a lot of those counties tomorrow, but they just won't put them up till tomorrow.
Right, but the thing is, I guess Tom was confused because he saw the map, he saw most of the counties in New Jersey covered, and saying, well, what's going on here? Well, again, it's for fog. It's not for winter. Now, I'm sure that in places like Sussex County, New Jersey, in the northwest part of New Jersey, most definitely they will have wintry weather. But I guess they just haven't clicked in with an advisory or a winter watch yet. Or maybe they have, and maybe what takes precedence first is the dense fog that, again, will be apparently covering much of New Jersey in the more immediate future tonight and tomorrow. And the dense fog makes sense, Joe, because we had a nice warm-up today, and all that warm air now flowing over the residual heavy snow that fell from this past weekend is probably causing quite a bit of foggy conditions across much of the Garden State.
And north and west of the immediate coast, that the snow cover is not that deep. So probably most of that, as fog as you know, is the great snow eater uh, when it comes to
Correct.
getting rid of snow. So a lot of that will probably disappear. Even though temperatures probably are not going to shoot up into the 50s up there, but the fog will do the trick. And with respect to the winter weather advisories, the precipitation that we're talking about here is in the fourth forecast period. In other words, so you have the Weather Service has tonight, tomorrow night, and Friday. So Friday, right at the moment, is the fourth forecast period. Rarely do they put winter weather advisories up in the fourth forecast period. Usually, when we get to, say, the second forecast period. So I'm thinking there's a chance they may throw them up tomorrow morning. I'm thinking they'll probably wait till tomorrow evening. Gives them a little bit more time to buy to see if the subtleties of the atmosphere, if the temperatures are going to be a degree warmer, degree or two warmer, or a degree or two colder. Snow is not an issue here. It just isn't. It's too warm aloft. We were looking at the soundings yesterday, and that warm nose above 3,900 feet is not going to go away. So it's going to be freezing rain and maybe some sleet that might get in there later in the day before it all ends, or some snow at the very end in some places that could whiten the ground in spots or a little bit more. The radar tonight. This is from I just refreshed this, so it's the latest radar is pretty loaded. And by the way, you can see the wave nature here on the radar very well. There's a ripple that has moving through now through upstate New York, and that's producing some snow there around Lake Ontario. So that's shooting up to the northeast, and also in northeastern New York. And we've got even some radar echoes extending down into Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey, well ahead of the main area. Then you have a wave of the second wave on the front that's producing all of this weather back through Ohio, Indiana. We've got rain and thunderstorms. There's like one or two thunderstorms maybe trying to form in some of these bands of heavier rain down in Georgia. And I actually have a downpour going on right now outside my door. And here's wave number 3. That is the last of the bunch, and that's now coming out Texas, and pretty impressive here in terms of the moisture that we're seeing across much of north central Texas here. In fact, this might be a good time, Joe, to take a look at Dallas-Fort Worth, because I see they're in the heart of some heavier precip. When I looked at them earlier, they were still 39. So we'll give, let's punch this up and see what they're doing here at DFW. Now, the criteria for winter storm warnings down here is a lot different than ours. It's much lower from the standpoint of accumulation. So it's for, I believe they're going for the possibility of up to a half an inch of ice and up to 1 to 3 inches of snow and sleet. But in places like Fort Worth and Dallas, the numbers are actually, that I saw, were a little bit lower from earlier. Right now, 34 with light rain in Dallas, forecasting to head down to a low of 20, and then tomorrow a high of 23. So that no fun for the folks there in the great state of Texas.
A half an inch of ice, though, Joe. I
Yeah,
mean, think about
yeah,
that.
that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot for anybody,
Yeah,
especially on
yeah.
roadways. No, I mean I get the winter storm warning. I have there's no issue there, from that standpoint. It's just that when it's straight snow, I mean they put up warnings for 1 to 3 inches. If you go further south, they sometimes put up winter storm warnings for a coating to an inch or two when they get the rare storms that
That's
go
if you live in Brownsville.
right, or a coating of snow. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a different world because obviously the criteria here is much higher. All right, so let's take a look at what WPC has to say, and this is the probability of at least 2, but I think I'm going to jump it up to at least 8. The threshold here is higher with what we're dealing with, and this forecast was from earlier today. So we'll give it a quick refresh. My apologies. Sometimes I don't remember. I'm doing so much stuff, I don't remember. And you don't see this very often. Well, that's a big area of a probability of at least 2. The probability of at least 8 is now remember there was snow that fell today, so we had yesterday's probabilities were very high over a large area in this 72-hour forecast period that we're showing you. So now this really takes us from 8 o'clock tonight to uh, 8 o'clock Saturday evening, which obviously by then everything is long gone. But you can see where the heaviest snow from the last wave is going to fall, and it's the 50% is in the not the darkest blue, but the next lighter shade of blue. I always like to use 50%. So this includes Cleveland, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. We mentioned last night, Joe, for a lot of these areas that are usually uh, get big snows from lake effect, and this is I think the second or third, definitely the second, possibly the third snow this year that's going to produce double-digit amounts that didn't really come from lake effect. That it's synoptically induced, as you put it, the normal meteorological way, as opposed to getting the right wind direction off the semi-frozen lake. And then you see the probabilities of 8 going through upstate New York, northern Vermont, and up across much of Maine. So that's where the snow goes. The freezing rain probabilities, and this is the probability of a tenth to an inch, and we'll check to see if there's an update here because they did actually up the probability somewhat earlier today. Uh, Now we've got this is the new forecast, the updated forecast that was issued at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And as far as ice is concerned, the probability of at least a tenth of an inch of ice accretion in a very large area. Let's use 50%. So 50% central Texas, northeastern Texas, swings across Arkansas. So you got probabilities as high as 95 to 100% of at least a tenth of an inch of ice accretion extending into southwest, just a small portion of southwest PA. And in the northeast, we have northern New Jersey now in the northernmost counties of New Jersey in a 50% probability, and in the Catskills we have a 60% probability of at least a tenth of an inch of ice accretion. We should check a quarter of an inch to see what I'd like to see what's on their minds with this, and they are the probabilities of a quarter of an inch of ice accretion not all that high, so that's good to see. You know, they're not overly impressed by some of the higher amounts that are showing up on the guidance. I was looking at all these different snow maps today, Joe. I'm sorry, ice maps today, Joe, which is something we really don't work with very often. And some of the models we're producing, you know, there's different types of ice maps. There's a FRAM ice map that actually is, I'm guessing the person who came up with it, his name was Fram, F-R-A-M. Uh, we I looked at that and it wasn't. It was lower than what the guidance. I was the NAM, the GFS, and a few others were producing half an inch or more ice accretions in spots, and on those FRAM maps they were basically half that. So that seemed to be a little bit more reasonable, and it's good to see that
I
WPC
learned.
is on that page.
I've just learned something. I've learned that FRAM could be a model guidance, a guidance model for meteorology. For all these years, I always thought that FRAM was a company that made oil filters
Yeah.
and fuel filters and similar products. That
Well,
but now I
well,
now they now they
maybe they do ice accretion maps, Joe. I mean, you know, they could be a conglomerate. Who knows? Uh,
yep.
so, drawing a snow map, and we've discussed the angst and the torture that Joe and I go through with regards to drawing snow maps. They're absolute torture. If you think drawing
And first of all, let me before you continue, I just want to say this impending situation is a classic reason why you do not you do when you if you're making a snow map up, you do not look at, as much as I love the tropical tidbits maps or whatever, but you look at the GFS snow map or what they're generating for snow. They're generating, Joe, something like 8, 9, 10 inches of snow just north of New York City out of this.
Yeah.
And that simply is not going to happen.
Down
And
from
this is the
down from
classic reason
15.
why. Down from 15. So this is the classic reason why, if you're going to create your own snow map, do not go to those maps that are generated by Tropical Tidbits of snow maps. I mean, you could look at them and say, oh, well, that's interesting, or whatever. But I mean, if you're going to use, I mean, if you go with what they're going for, you input that 8 or 10 inch, you look like a nut, saying, oh yeah, we're going to have 8 to 10 inches of snow on Friday. It ain't going to happen. This is primarily sleet, ice, and freezing rain. It is not a snowmaker.
Right, and the reason for that is, by the way, the algorithm that creates those snow maps does not take into account that that's falling as sleet or freezing rain. So if there's sleet or freezing rain in a weather situation, and you look at one of those, you look at the snow maps on Tropical Tidbits, which we love. This is not a criticism. We love Tropical Tidbits. Levi Cowan.
We still love you, Levi.
We do.
We still think you're great, Levi Cohen.
We love you that you added all the in between runs of the European, and you went to the 3-hour increments. Terrific. The problem with the snow maps there are the fact that it doesn't read the precipitation when it's sleet or freezing rain. It thinks it's snow. So you get these ridiculous numbers. It basically just takes the liquid precip, takes it and multiplies it by puts a 10-to-1 ratio on it, so you get an inch of snow, an inch of liquid precip, which is 10 inches of snow, and that's how it comes up with those numbers. Now on Pivotal Weather, if you go to pivotalweather.com, and I have subscribed to Pivotal Weather, and those maps there, their snow maps actually take out the sleet. And they have separate ice maps. So when you look at those, they're more honest in terms of they actually, if they're reflecting a situation like this, if you look at the snow maps, there's nothing around New York City, and I mean there's like a couple of tenths or something, or maybe an inch as you go further north, because that's taking it off the models that are showing that maybe there might be a little bit of a change right before it ends. But there are separate ice maps, so it makes it a lot. It takes that error out of the equation. So the snow and ice maps on Pivotal are much more useful from that respect. But even then, especially when we go out in the long range, we talk about the clown maps that are after say 48 or 72 hours with some ridiculous these ridiculous amounts of 35 and 40 inches that we saw in the storm along the coast over the weekend. I mean that's a whole other conversation. What I did was, I'm not putting up an ice map. I can't draw an ice map. There's no way. I'm just kind of giving a general view that areas north and west of the immediate coast, north of Route 195 in New Jersey, particularly north of Route 78 in New Jersey, are going to get anywhere from a tenth to a quarter of an inch, and it'll be less than a tenth of an inch as you go south, maybe to 195. You go down the corridor that is just west of Philadelphia and Trenton, maybe a hundred, anywhere from 0.01 to 0.10, and then they'll go up as you go north and west toward Allentown and go even higher as you go up to Scranton. The max area is likely to be northeast of around or just northeast of Scranton to Middletown, on up to Poughkeepsie, and points north through the Catskills and further up the Hudson Valley. I focused instead on the time that the 32-degree temperature line will arrive. And how I arrived at this, Joe, is I took the NAM and the GFS from this afternoon and just kind of moved it up about an hour so that there's a range. So the way I came up with this in terms of a changeover, the temperature dropping below 32. This is for Friday morning. Would be from just north of Lowell, Massachusetts, to near Springfield, to Poughkeepsie, through Sullivan County, just to the west of Middletown, and then go south and west between Allentown and Scranton. At 8 a.m., the 32-degree line should be south of Boston to about Hartford, northwest of Bridgeport to the Bronx, and across New Jersey, north of Bridgewater, and then go south and west into southeast PA. The 11 a.m. 32-degree line will probably be on the coast along the south shore of Long Island, coming in at northern Monmouth County to north of Trenton, to just west of Philadelphia, to just west of Wilmington. And then by 2 p.m., the 32-degree line will be somewhere south of Toms River, going west and then dropping southward toward Vineland. So that's my that's how I approach this, because Joe, to me, this is really the most important thing, because if these numbers are off by 2 hours, 1 or 2 hours in either direction, that could make a big difference between getting a couple of hundredths of ice accretion or to a tenth of ice accretion. If it's faster, if it comes in faster, the numbers are going to skew higher. So I'm focusing on the time that the temperature drops below 32. That's my approach on this. I'd be curious to know how you feel about what I'm putting up.
No, I feel good. Maybe because it's cold air, and it seems like cold air always seems to work its way a little faster. Maybe slightly more south on each one of those lines. I think quite frankly, where I am here in Putnam Valley, I was telling my son and daughter-in-law, I thought it would start icing up here maybe as early as 4 in the morning, but 4, 5, 6 o'clock. No matter which way you slice it or dice it, this is an impending push of very cold air interacting with a nice slug of precipitation that is going to ice things over very quickly. And I would like to see, at least in the Hudson Valley, everywhere in the Hudson Valley, supervisors just say, look, it's a Friday, let's give them a 3-day weekend or whatever, because it's just going to be too problematic for especially those school buses. Somewhere, I think about a year ago, and I got this off of Tri-State Weather in Massachusetts. They had a video on YouTube of a school bus that just simply lost control. It was going through a neighborhood block or whatever like that. It started to go this way and that way, and it slammed into a couple of cars because it just couldn't do it. And I'm envisioning, pictures like that come early Friday. So it's going to be rough. And I agree with you. It's tough and very difficult. A lot more difficult to try to draw a snow map as opposed to, an ice map,
Right.
as opposed to a snow map.
And by the way, Tom Contino, I saw you earlier. You were asking about should you take the railroad. You know what? Take the railroad, because it's the course of least regret. And then if you drove in it, you might be fine going in, but who knows what you'll find going out. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe it won't be. I would, if to me, even just the glaze, and Joe and I both have had experiences with dealing with just glaze from drizzle that was a nightmare. And mine including watching a Mack truck dropping sideways down a hill heading right for me, and thankfully he stopped about 40 feet away on the Long Island Expressway near that hill near Route 110. So to me, if it was snow, it's one thing. If you've got four-wheel drive, I've driven in every snowstorm that's been out there because I had to, and thankfully I survived them all. Without ever, knock on wood, ever getting into even anything minor. But I don't like to take I don't like taking chances when it comes to even a minimal amount of freezing rain. And here we have, I got the ice accretion map from the Weather Service. This was issued at the time on this was at 6 p.m. and it's mostly updated now. If you go to the actual Weather Service forecast office, which you, by the way, if you download my free weather app, as I said, if you download the free weather app, I've got all the maps on the homepage of the app. So you don't have to sit there and go through every Weather Service forecast office and trying to find the map. I've got them automatically coming in when they put them out. The app updates them, so it saves you a ton of time, and you could, if you're really just into the weather part of it, you could find every snow map from Maine all the way down to Georgia, although south of Virginia it really doesn't apply. But you can see they're drawing at least 3/10 and even up to they got a half-inch plot there between in the highway that goes between Scranton and Allentown, 0.46 of ice accretion. Notice you get down close to the coast. They're really not showing too much. If you're on Long Island, if you're on in northern Nassau, northwestern Suffolk County, which notoriously gets colder a lot quicker than the South Shore. In fact, the Long Island Expressway is almost like a wall where the 32-degree line could just kind of stop right there, and it becomes two different worlds in terms of what you're dealing with outside. There'll probably be some ice accretion on the North Shore and probably less ice accretion going on the South Shore. Again, depending on how quick the temperatures fall. But you can see how extensive it is. And then we go back further west. If you head into parts of Ohio, you're seeing ice accretion amounts of almost up to a half an inch being indicated there. I was hoping the map would take us a little bit further to the west and load, but it takes a little time. The digital forecast map on the Weather Service is nice, but it takes forever. But I mean that area in purple, Joe, that's all. It looks like that's all 0.4 of an inch or higher ice accretion, including a couple of places that are approaching 0.6 of an inch of ice accretion. And back through Texas, most of the ice accretion amounts here are generally under a quarter of an inch. But again, here it's a problem because they don't get it too often, so they're not used to it. But they handle it. They handle it like Texans handle it, and
it's scary.
Yeah, it is. It is because again, it doesn't really take too much. But this is quite a stretch here, and I'll let this load, and we'll go to the models and take a look at what's going on from that respect. This was the GFS, and I'll roll it just back a couple of frames. So here we are. This is tonight at 1 a.m. You can see that rain in PA. And even into upstate New York, there's more rain than anything else, but the colder air starts coming in. You see the change over to snow. You see that little wave there in eastern Tennessee is riding right along the frontal boundary, right there. And
it's a ripple.
Yeah, it's a ripple, and there's going to be another ripple. As each one goes by, the front gets nudged a little bit further to the east. And it's this delicate balance of timing. Where is the wave with respect to your geography when the wave goes by? How much precip is left behind it? That's really the battle we're sort of playing tomorrow. Tomorrow night, there's a second wave that forms, and you see it there in Northern Virginia. That goes up. That actually brings the front down to the coast. And I'll go close up here. The GFS, Joe, has been. I don't think the GFS has changed this in 5 days. It's been the same as far as what it's been showing here. It hasn't moved very much at all. The only thing I've noticed is maybe it doesn't get as far south into South Jersey, but as far as everybody else is concerned, it's been just locked on this. It locked on this like about 4 days ago, and every run has been the same. And here we have tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. The freezing rain line at New York City into southern Connecticut. By 1 p.m., there's the wave east of New Jersey, south of Long Island. Doesn't intensify. There's nothing in the upper atmosphere to energize it, so it's all overrunning. And you see where the freezing rain is. This is actual precip fallen. It's not the radar. And you also see what's fallen in the past 6 hours in upstate New York and western PA, mostly light snow as it starts to taper off. And then by 7 p.m., the precip's long gone. But this is what falls between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m., which will be the coldest part of the day. And again, how much precip are we going to have in that stretch? Are we going to have a half an inch of liquid during the morning and afternoon? Most of it coming before 1 o'clock. Some of it, if it's an hour or two slower, then, we'll see. But once it's done, it's done. And then weather conditions can start to improve after that. And we'll be headed down into the teens and single digits in most of the Northeast, and even low single digits and below zero, probably in the coldest spots well north, come Saturday morning.
Yes, it is. I tell you, it was so lovely today with the temperatures locally reaching into the mid and upper 40s. And even places that had underneath the snow from this past weekend, there was on my property some light sheet of ice. All of that got melted. All of that was gone. And it's just so frustrating now to know that come tomorrow night and Friday, we're going to be going right back to the same icy, slick, slippery situation that it took till now to get rid of, at least where I live. And now I guess Mother Nature knows that when you get rid of all of the snow and ice during the course of the winter, that it's time to replenish the supply. And the supply is indeed looking like it's going to be replenished, both in terms of icy conditions on Friday, and then, as you just mentioned, Joe, another wave of very cold weather coming our way in time for the upcoming weekend.
By the way, Johnny Quest, you asked about potential flooding where you are. Now, there's a band on at least on the GFS anyway, there's a band of heavy rain. You see it there in the yellow on the edge of where the serious icing is going to occur, where they have the ice storm warnings up in parts of eastern Arkansas and points north and east. But that looks like it weakens as before it gets to you. So I'm thinking no. You'll get probably some heavy downpours. I mean, I don't think you're going to get. I don't think you're going to get anything excessive. It doesn't look like it. It also looks like the cold air is damming down the other side of the mountains in West Virginia, in the western part of the state and into Kentucky, and the eastern to the east. The cold air doesn't really get to you, so it's mostly rain for you in northwestern Virginia. In fact, just about all of Virginia, except the extreme northeast, closer to the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area and points north and west, where you're kind of on the edge of the freezing rain for a little while tomorrow, and then it moves out. And then, of course, we've got another cold air mass that comes in after that, and a nice high that builds in. So Saturday looks good, and earlier, the models back days ago, or even up until yesterday, the front actually stalls over Florida, and you'll notice on the now that I've gone to the full U.S. Shot here, and I'll make it a little bit bigger for everybody to see. There's another little wave that's developing off the Florida coast, and the GFS was being cute with this and making a tight little storm, moving it up the coast and basically burying our area from eastern PA to southern New England with 6 to 10 inches later Sunday into Sunday night. That's not going to happen, okay? That's not going to happen. That's going to go out, and then we'll just be cold and mostly dry. There's another wave that develops off the Florida coast on Tuesday, and that goes out. Now, a cold front comes down from the north later next week. We're at the 10th. And take a look at this low, Joe. I'm going to be really interested to see. We were talking about that window of opportunity around the 11th to the 14th, and you've got a, I don't know if this would qualify as an Alberta Clipper. I don't think it is, but that's a fairly strong shortwave there that's diving southeastward with that low in northern Iowa, and there's a bitter cold high coming in behind it. Now that low moves across northern Indiana, up into northeast Ohio and upstate New York, and then suddenly redevelops in eastern Connecticut. And it's a 991 low that explodes to an 81 low. This could be a snowstorm later next week, the way it's printed on the models for central and northern New England and northeastern New York to an extent, and for Maine. Now, that gets really deep, and we get into, what's the thickness here? 504? I mean, that's really cold air that's coming down. That's another one of these, bitter shots that we've been seeing for the last couple of weeks. So there comes the next one. And
have you noticed, by the way, Joe, that all of these events of recent days have been coinciding with the start of or during the weekend? They're not like in the middle of the week or not on a Monday or Tuesday. They all seem to be kidding us, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in one way, shape, or form. This, of course, the system that's coming our way will be hitting us mostly on Friday of this week. But now the next system, the one that you're talking about for the 11th and 12th, that's Friday again, the end of the week.
Right.
It's kind of amazing that they're all coming basically on right around the same weekday, the end of the week on Friday.
Now I've got a little theory about this. Okay. So anyway, let's say this I'm just showing you that, but I want to go to the upper air. That goes out, and you got this next high that goes off the Virginia coast, which is not a favorable position. There's this system here on Sunday, the 13th and 14th, that the model doesn't really do very much with. And the reason why it doesn't do very much with is there's a short wave that's behind the first one. There's no room for it. But um, Alan Casper, who we reference from time to time, and we both, was part of our growing up. When it comes to snow, this is a very, very short. Look at how deep this trough is that's coming down next Thursday. That creates that big storm. What if that trough, Joe, as sharp as it is, winds up where the short wave is a little bit further to the south, and instead of saying redeveloping a low, instead of taking the primary low goes into western New York and redevelops over eastern Connecticut, what if we wind up with an even deeper trough that goes down where the primary goes instead to, say, southern Pennsylvania or maybe northern West Virginia and redevelops off of the Delaware coast or Atlantic City? I mean, I think it's a long shot, but when I see something this sharp and this deep, I don't you don't
This
want
early.
and this early. And the other thing is, I noticed this today, which was really important, is that all three models are doing something with this. It's when we go look at the long range, and here we're looking at day 8 and 9. So we know there's going to be room for big changes along the way. But when you look at the long range, one of the things you look for, in my view, that's really important is when all three models, they don't have to be exact, but if they're similar in what's going on in the upper atmosphere, that's kind of an alarm bell, saying that what, this looks like it's going to happen in some form, but maybe we don't know exactly what. And I noticed on the Canadian model that what the Canadian is doing here, for example, is the first trough is not as deep, and it actually has a second stronger shortwave on Saturday the 12th from southern Illinois further south. So that's another possibility where the first trough is overdone by the GFS, and instead you wind up the second trough might be one that turns out to be more important and makes something for, say, Sunday the 13th or Monday the 14th, Valentine's Day, which is what the GFS, by the way, was telegraphing for many days in its long range, which I thought was unusual too, because it just kept on. It showed it. It started at 384 hours, and every day every run it was still there, and usually the models don't do that. The storms are there on one print, and then on the next print they're gone, and they might be gone for a day or two, and then they come back, but then they come back someplace else. And then you look at the European this afternoon, and the European has. Oh, this is the new one. I'm sorry. Let me get the old one. This is this.
I agree with you, and I said this yesterday, that if you go back, let's say 384 hours, and just look at the way this has been developing, the old Craig Allen axiom, the trend is your friend. I mean, just the way it's been trending each day, that trough gets not a tremendous amount of change, but just a little stronger and a little bit more to the south and a little stronger, a little bit more to the south. So what if, Joe, when we get within, let's say, 4 or 5 days, that the models then all of a sudden take this shortwave and kind of elongate it or stretch it out a little bit more? I think that's what you were implying.
Yeah.
Suggesting that maybe the storm track would be, as you said, across West Virginia, the Ohio Valley, and off of the coast, let's say to our south. That could happen. And especially so when we said all the way back to the very beginning of the winter season that it looks like this is going to be a kind of a winter where you don't necessarily look at things. You can look at them 8 or 9 or 10 days in advance, but really things don't really come into focus until like 4 or 5 days before. So who's to say that maybe sometime early next week we start to see that trough elongate, and that is showing a suggestion of some kind of a storm passing not north of us, but over us or to the south of us, and that would set the stage for another possible wintry weather event for us. for a week from Friday.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, uh, just to show the three models. So here's the GFS. This is on Saturday the 12th. Okay, the first that really sharp trough has already gone through. Okay, this has already gone through for on Thursday night, Friday. So that's gone. So on the this is the 234 hour. So here we have, there's more energy that's upstream. The GFS is kind of weak with that upstream energy. We switch to the Canadian, and the Canadian has again all troughing in the east, but it has a well-defined shortwave that's from northern Illinois southward. And then you go to the European 240 hour from today, which I'll pick up right now. Once the new runs come in, usually the maps will automatically switch to the matching map on the previous run. But so here's the European. They all have this troughing in the east. And that's what I would expect to see at this stage of the game. So we know it's going to change. We know it's going to evolve into something other than what we're seeing here in terms of the specifics on the surface. But the fact that they all have troughs in the east, I think is a bell goes off and says pay attention. So I think we're going to be paying attention. And look, it could ultimately wind up as a strong Arctic front that comes through, and we just turn very cold behind it. It could turn out to be something much more dynamic than that, and there's still always the possibility that the models could change enough that maybe it'll evolve into something we don't even expect at the moment. But it's something that I think we will probably be looking at. And just to finish up with the long range on this, Joe, I was looking out at the 10 millibar and the stratosphere again and all the rest of it. Uh, this pattern this pattern does not look like it's going to want to break down anytime soon. So I think we're still going to be cold, and not maybe every single day. There probably will be moderation in between, maybe the occasional day where the temperature goes above normal. But there's enough going on. There's an active northern jet. The southern jet ain't too shabby. So if there will be more chances along the way, and there will be chances that are there that might be there in the coming days that we're not exactly seeing right now.
And a sharp cold front could very well be accompanied by a line of heavy snow showers and snow squalls, which we have seen around here in recent years as well. So for the snow lovers, a cheap thrill maybe, as opposed to, let's say, a bigger thrill like what we had this past weekend. So there you go. It certainly is. I agree with you, Joe. It certainly has not been boring. And next weekend, not this weekend, but the following weekend, a lot of people will be looking at the weather closely because there may very well be Super Bowl parties going on and people doing a lot of commuting and traveling that weekend as well. So it looks like and all I could say is, what happened, CPC, Climate Prediction Center? You promised that February would be, I was not meant to take a shot at you, but I mean, I know that the banner was that, don't worry about it. February is going to be a lot easier because it's going to be a lot milder. We look for a spell of milder weather. I suppose they thought that the ridge was going to pump up offshore, but I haven't seen much of a pumping lately. I mean, today might have been one of the nicest days we've had here in a number of days, and looks like we're going to go right back into the icebox again after we get past this next round Thursday night and Friday.
Yep. Chuck Cardillo says, do you agree with Puxatawny Phil with the 6 more weeks of winter? Well, look, I'll just say this with regards to groundhogs that have better agents and make more money than I do, or that Joe does, and have throughout our entire career, that I found this absolutely fantastic recipe on I think it was MotherEarth.com for Groundhog Stew. So give it a look. You might want to try it. But it sounded delicious, Joe. But the only problem is that when you have to skin and clean the groundhog, you got to be careful because they have glands that well, you know, let's just say that it's not perfume. And you have to be careful when you take those out. But just a word of caution to everybody: if you do decide to go down this particular road, just be careful of the glands. Okay, just very important.
And I forgot, I did not get the name, but somebody on the chat board said, why is it that they just every year they do the same thing and pay so much attention to the groundhog? Actually, I thought about this, Joe. There are two holidays during the year which started out as something singular, which is now cloned to different parts of the country. It used to be that we had the big ball drop from Times Square on New Year's Eve, and we had Puxatawny Phil, the lone groundhog. But over the years, now we see on New Year's Eve there are other places that drop something from a tall building or whatever to celebrate New Year's Eve. Even here in the Westchester County area, in White Plains, they have a big ball drop of their own. And on Groundhog Day, as you are well aware, there are groundhogs and woodchucks all over the United States. And sometimes it's not even a woodchuck or a groundhog. Sometimes it's another animal, like a squirrel or whatever, that supposedly comes out and predicts the weather. So it's something that people like to do and like to celebrate. And
well, we had a bear that dropped a groundhog, didn't we?
Yes, we did, and the groundhog took a bite out of the mayor. Remember that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I do. And by the way, somebody I saw somebody post about the fact that one of these renegade groundhogs from other places sadly passed away apparently last night. Just couldn't take the pressure. So there was no groundhog this morning to pull out. By the way, just really quick, because we're going to wrap it up early, because we were both exhausted last night after the show. We love doing shows and when they go long, but we want to save our energy for tomorrow night when Tony Gigi and maybe Bill Goodman would be here. But you put up an interesting post about this particular day because pulling out the groundhog coincides pretty much with the halfway point of winter. And you explained this whole thing about the shorter, that the winter season being shorter than the summer. So I think that was pretty, that was interesting. So I thought you could maybe share it really quickly with everybody.
Yeah, well, the thing is that a lot of people think that the reason why we have such hot weather in the summer and cold in the winter is that it is a function of the distance of the Earth from the sun, that they think that we're closest to the sun in the summer and we're furthest away in the winter. Absolutely wrong. In fact, we're closest to the sun in our orbit because the orbit is an oval or an ellipse. We're closest about 91.5 million miles in early January. And when we're closest to the sun, the Earth in its orbit is moving fastest, as opposed to in the summertime, when we're farthest from the sun, it's moving slower. So as a result, winter, because we're moving fastest in our orbit, only lasts about 89 days. In the summertime, the summer season lasts 93 days because, again, we're moving more slowly. At that point, the time when we're farthest from the sun is right around the 4th of July, believe it or not. The seasons, the tilt of the Earth's axis, is what causes the changes of the temperature during the course of the year. And yeah, Joe, tomorrow at 10:45 p.m., tomorrow night, Thursday night, 10:45 p.m., will be the midpoint of winter. We'll be exactly halfway between the winter solstice, December 21st, and the vernal equinox on March 20th. So depending upon how you feel about winter, your container, your winter bottle, so to speak, is either half empty or half full as of tomorrow night. And Groundhog Day was also known as a kind of a religious day as Candlemas Day. And that was thought of as the traditional midpoint of winter, but actually it's off by about a day. It will be tomorrow that we'll be at the midpoint, as opposed to the groundhog sticking his head out or being pulled out of his burrow by the mainstream media and everybody else. How did he manage to see his shadow when all of Pennsylvania was under a thick overcast this morning?
Oh, who
Maybe
knows?
It was the TV lights that fooled him.
It's always the TV lights. It's always the TV lights. Or bad makeup. I don't know.
Yep.
160 likes tonight. Thank you so much for those of you who have hit the like button. It is most appreciated. Joe and I love to see people hit the like button because that means that you like our show. So if you can inch it up a little higher and get us closer, get us to the 200 mark, and we could kind of say good, wrap it up for tonight. David Fuller hitting super chat tonight. Thank you so much again, David, for doing that. The tomorrow night, as a reminder, at 8 o'clock start time. Uh, Tony Gigi, from retired forecaster from the National Weather Service in Mount Holly, will be here, and also hopefully, because he wasn't sure, Upton, New York, covering the New York City tri-state area, not retired, but maybe one day wants to be, meteor eventually, because everybody gets to retire. Meteorologist and forecaster Bill Goodman from the National Weather Service in Upton, New York, because we had the two of them on last week, and it was great before the big snowstorm, having us in a 4-box. So hopefully we'll be able to get them here again. And again, that's at 8 o'clock. Download the free Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app on Google Play or on the App Store, so you can get not only my weather updates and your local forecast and radar from the Weather Service, but you can also have every snow and ice forecast map from the Weather Service from Maine to Florida, with all in one place. So you don't have to go to each Weather Service office and be jealous that it's snowing in somebody else's state other than yours. So it's all there, and it's very convenient. So go to the App Store or go to Google Play for that. So we're at 196. Could we have 4 more? Could we have 4 more likes, and then we
I
can
have
say goodbye?
197. I see 197 on mine. Come on, 3 more, folks.
Because Joe wants
3 more,
to
so I can ring my little
ring
bell.
the bell. It's tinkling in
It's
the background. It's
198.
getting ready.
There we go.
Thank
201.
you. All right.
Thank you.
Wrapping it up for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Good night, everybody.
Nighty-night.